this month's foodie book club was The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan. It's taken me a few months to read it actually. I don't know why it took me so long. It's quite a gritty book. It's very detailed about the food chain and it goes into a lot of detail. It begins with him following a single grain of corn, which turns into an impossible thing, and he follows it all the way through and looks at how many products corn is actually used in. And then he's looking more about animal welfare and whether they are treated well and whether or not we should be eating them. And to be honest, it's not something that I have given that much thought to. Recently I've been trying to buy more food which is organic, and my main reason for that has been because I'm concerned about what's going into the non-organic food more than the animal welfare side of things. And actually it turns out that a lot of the organic food, although some of the practices are better for the animals, they're not necessarily living in the most humane conditions. You can still mass farm organic food and have chickens and things living in very confined quarters, and although they are getting organic feed, it might be organic corn and not necessarily for cows. That's not necessarily the best thing. So it was really interesting to look at the food chain in detail like that, and the main outcome for me has been to look more closely at where my food comes from. It doesn't organic doesn't necessarily mean it's a seal of approval, and organic doesn't necessarily mean healthy, although it does mean there's nothing, not necessarily any extra chemicals added to it. For animal welfare, organic doesn't really mean anything at all. And the book follows Michael on his journey of he's trying to follow a steer from the feedlot to his whole life, and then finally to when he is killed at the end and processed into beef, which is really interesting. But what he actually finds is he's not allowed into the killing floor, the place where they're killing the animals, and that concerns him, and he's really calling for more transparency in food. And he does find an organic farm that are doing it on a small scale, and they're doing it really well, and the animals have a good life, that they live as chickens and cows should, and then they're butchered in a humane way in small batches, so it's not a big mass production thing, it's on a small scale. And there are people travelling from a long way to that farm because they like the transparency, they like being able to see their meat being slaughtered and being happy in the fields and knowing that it's had the best life that it can. And I think that was the thing that I picked up the most from it, was I do want to continue eating meat, but I should question more where it's coming from and the practices that it's going through. And that's something that the book made me really look at in more detail. It didn't make me want to turn into a vegetarian, which at one point he actually did when he was trying to, on this like quest to find out whether meat and eat was right or not. But it did make me question where the food is coming from. And the big thing is the food miles and things that are added onto food. So it's about looking locally, and it's about going to the local farms and actually asking to see their practices and finding out what the animals are being fed. And that's something you can only do on a really small scale, I think. So that's something that I've definitely taken away from it and I want to do in the future. And I'm quite fortunate in the area that I live in. There are a lot of local farms and places where I can get that good quality meat from. But for me, it's always been a journey of convenience. I often previously have reached for the 3 for 10s at the supermarket. So you get 3 packs of meat for £10. No question about where that meat came from. It's just at a price point that suits me. And that's something that I definitely don't want to do anymore. And I think it's worth eating less meat and having a high quality meat. And that is partly for the animal welfare, but also for me, so I know what's in that meat. And I think that's important. So that's something that I will definitely continue to do. The book brought up lots of interesting issues about food mileage as well, particularly the mixed salad bags that you get, and about how many calories you take from that bag when you eat it, and how many go into production and preserving it and ferrying it halfway across the world. And that sustainable side of it it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense to grow those microgreens and the time and energy effort that goes into processing them and what you get out of them from eating it. It's just crazy, the maths when you work it out. And that's something I am aware of, and I think food mileage is something I've been aware of, but probably not so much the animal welfare, which the book really opens my eyes to. The next book that I want to read I think is probably going to be in a similar vein, and it's called Swallow This by Joanna Blythman. Now she's a food reporter, and this book only came out in January this year, whereas The Omnivore's Dilemma has been out for a while, so I'm interested in seeing if there's been any change in the food industry. My gut instinct is that this Swallow This is a lot about labelling, and probably there hasn't been, and it really is down to you as the consumer to do the research. But I'm going to read that next month if you would like to join along, and I plan to read it in the 1 month. Thanks for watching, guys. This month for Foodie Book Club I read Eat and Run by Scott Jurek,